when Officer Emma and her canine police dog become the town's last hope against a deadly secret. They uncover a dark conspiracy buried deep within their quiet community. As Emma and her loyal canine partner, Speedy, chase leads, they stumble upon a web of corruption that threatens not only their town, but their lives. With every step closer to the truth, the danger escalates, and Emma must decide how far she's willing to go. When a shadowy figure from the past resurfaces, will they make it out alive, or will the town's deadly secrets swallow them whole? The sun was setting over the small town of Hawthorne, casting long shadows across the roads that cut through it. Officer Emma Thompson cruised down the main street in her patrol car, her German Shepherd canine, Speedy, sitting alertly beside her in the passenger seat. Speedy, a highly trained narcotics dog, had been Emma's partner for over 2 years. Together, they made a formidable team, trusted by the town's residents to keep things safe and secure. Today, like any other, had been calm, routine, or so it seemed. Speedy suddenly shifted in her seat, her nose twitching, and then her eyes locked onto something in the distance. Emma noticed the change in her dog's behavior, but didn't think much of it first. They had just passed the old park bench near the town square, a quiet spot that had been there for years. Speedy sniffed the air, her body stiffening, and then her head swung to the left, towards the overgrown area by an abandoned house. "What is it, girl?" Emma asked softly, glancing at Speedy. But Speedy didn't respond. Instead, she continued to sniff the air, her ears twitching. Something was off. "All right, let's check it out," Emma decided, pulling the patrol car over. She put the car in park and stepped out, calling Speedy to follow. The house ahead had been abandoned for as long as anyone could remember. The windows were boarded up, the grass around it long and unruly, but it didn't seem dangerous. "Stay close," Emma murmured as she reached for a flashlight. She walked slowly towards the house, scanning the surroundings with her trained eyes. Speedy was now intensely focused, sniffing at the ground near the house's back entrance. Emma knelt down beside her partner, brushing a hand through her fur. "What is it, girl?" she asked again, but Speedy didn't respond. Her tail stiffened, and she let out a low whine, her eyes darting around, refusing to leave the spot. Emma stood up, her mind working through the possibilities. It was probably nothing, just an old building that smelled strange. Dogs often picked up on things that weren't immediately obvious to humans. She gave Speedy a few pats and turned back to the car. "You're being paranoid," she said under her breath, but the unease lingered in the pit of her stomach. The night air felt heavier, but it was probably just the quiet of the town settling in. As they resumed their patrol, Speedy's strange behavior continued. Every time they passed certain spots, like the secluded woods on the edge of town or an old storage facility near the industrial area, Speedy would start sniffing wildly at nothing, tugging at the leash and giving Emma an almost frantic look. Emma tried to ignore it first, but it was hard to shake off the feeling that something wasn't quite right. The next day, during another routine patrol, Speedy's behavior was even more erratic. They had stopped by the old town square when Speedy suddenly lunged towards a park bench, sniffing the air with such urgency that Emma almost lost her grip on the leash. She stepped back, confused. "What's going on?" she muttered, eyeing the bench. It was just a bench. Nothing unusual about it. But Speedy didn't think so. She was circling the spot, alert as if something was there that Emma couldn't see. Emma made a quick decision. She would take Speedy to the vet. There was no harm in a quick checkup, and she could get some answers about her partner's unusual reactions. The vet, Dr. Emily Ford, had worked with Speedy before and was used to dealing with her specific needs as a narcotics dog. Emma explained the situation to her, and Dr. Ford agreed to take a look. After a thorough examination, Dr. Ford raised an eyebrow. "You know, Speedy might be sensing something different, something that's not exactly narcotics." Emma stared at the vet, confused. "What do you mean?" Dr. Ford shrugged. "There are some chemicals, rare ones used in the production of illicit substances, that dogs like Speedy can pick up on. They're not common, though. They're used in very specific circumstances. I'm guessing it's something like that." Emma left the vet's office with more questions than answers. What could be so strong that it made Speedy react this way? And where was it coming from? Later that evening, Emma spent hours researching the town's history, searching for anything unusual that might explain Speedy's strange behavior. She stumbled across a local news article from over 20 years ago, an unsolved case about a young woman named Emma Reynolds. Emma had vanished without a trace. Her last known location near the old park bench where Speedy had been so focused earlier that day. The case had never been solved, and the town had moved on, but the article left an uneasy feeling in Emma's stomach. She dug deeper into the case, learning that Emma had been involved in something more than just a missing persons report. There were whispers about drug operations in the town back then, something that had been swept under the rug. Could there be a connection between Emma's disappearance and the chemicals Speedy was picking up? Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. She wasn't one to believe in coincidences, especially not in a town like Hawthorne, where everything seemed too perfect, too quiet. The next day, Emma returned to the storage facility she had passed earlier, Speedy by her side. This time, she was determined to find out what had caught her dog's attention. Speedy led the way, tugging at the leash until they reached an old metal door in the back of the building, one that had been overlooked in previous investigations. It creaked open with a forceful push, revealing a dark, dusty compartment. Inside, Emma found something that made her heart race, a small vial, tucked away in a hidden corner. She didn't need to open it to know what it was. The scent was unmistakable. It was the same chemical Speedy had been reacting to, but there was more. As Emma carefully examined the vial, she realized it wasn't just any substance. It was linked to the town's dark past, to the drug ring that had once secretly operated here. And that connection, however strange it seemed, might also explain what happened to Emma Reynolds all those years ago. Emma's mind began to piece together the puzzle. But one thing was clear. The town she had grown up in, its perfect, peaceful image, was hiding something far darker than anyone could have imagined. The following days were filled with a sense of urgency. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the answers she sought were close, too close, and the stakes were getting higher. After consulting with Dr. Ford, who suggested that Speedy's reactions were tied to the chemical found in the vial, Emma knew she couldn't ignore the signs any longer. The case was far from over, and now, it seemed like it had only just begun. With Speedy by her side, Emma started revisiting key locations from Emma's case, hoping to uncover something that had been missed before. They returned to the old storage facility. Emma's eyes scanned every inch of the area, trying to look at it with a fresh perspective. Speedy's nose was in overdrive, sniffing every crack and corner. For the most part, the building still looked abandoned. Dust had settled on the shelves, and cobwebs hung like forgotten memories. But something was different this time. Emma wasn't just looking for ordinary clues. She was looking for a connection. It was Speedy's sudden tug on the leash that caught her attention. The dog was pulling harder now, heading back towards the deeper corners of the facility. Emma followed closely behind, her flashlight cutting through the dark. At the farthest end of the building, hidden under a pile of old crates, she found something unexpected, a small, weathered cardboard box. She opened it carefully, revealing a collection of papers inside. Flipping through the stack, Emma's breath caught. The documents were old, but they were unmistakably linked to the operation that had once been here. They detail names, shipments, and places that were familiar to her, local addresses, a list of shipments, and the kind of coded language that only those involved in the drug trade would understand. As she scanned the names, her eyes stopped on one in particular, Emma Reynolds. Her name was on the list, with details about her forced involvement in transporting substances for the operation. It all made sense now. Emma hadn't just disappeared. She had been part of something much darker. Emma's heart raced as the pieces started to fit together. The operation had been much more than a local drug ring. It was a network that stretched further than anyone had realized. Emma's disappearance was part of the cover-up, a methodical attempt to remove anyone who got too close to the truth. But someone had to be protecting these criminals, covering their tracks. That was when Emma's phone buzzed. An anonymous message appeared on the screen. "Stop now, or else." The words hit Emma like a slap in the face. Someone knew she was getting too close. Someone who didn't want the past uncovered. Despite the threat, Emma wasn't about to stop. She had to keep going. The next day, as Emma prepared to investigate further, she was interrupted by a visit from Officer Ben Foster, a fellow officer she had always trusted. The look on his face was enough to make her stomach drop. "Emma, you need to drop this case," he said firmly. "The chief has already made it clear. We don't want any trouble." Emma's eyes narrowed. She had known Ben for years, and she knew him to be a man of integrity. To see him acting this way, to see him so adamant that she stopped digging, was a red flag. There was something bigger at play here, and Ben was either involved or being manipulated. "I can't do that, Ben," Emma replied, her voice steady. Emma didn't just disappear. She was taken, and I intend to find out why. Ben's face hardened, and with a final, disappointed glance, he turned and walked away. Emma stood there, her resolve only growing stronger. As the days passed, Emma's investigation continued. She knew the danger was closing in, but she also knew that if she stopped now, everything would be in vain. Speedy's behavior, as erratic as ever, was the only thing that kept her on track. The dog was always leading her to new spots, some of which seemed inconspicuous, but, when investigated, yielded more clues. One night, as they were driving out of town toward the remote area, Speedy started to grow restless again. The dog whined, her body tense, and her eyes fixated on something ahead. Emma followed her lead, pulling over at the side of the road and stepping out into the cool night air. The location was an old farm on the outskirts of town. It had been abandoned for years, and there was nothing to indicate that it was of any importance. But Speedy's behavior didn't lie. Emma followed the dog to an old shack, its walls weathered and decaying. Inside, the air smelled stale, and the floors creaked under their feet. Emma's flashlight revealed scattered remnants of what seemed like old drug manufacturing equipment, machines that hadn't been used in a long time, but still left a clear mark. And in the corner, partially hidden under a pile of old blankets, were personal items that made Emma's heart skip a beat. A necklace with a familiar pendant. A diary with Emma's name written on the cover. Emma had been here. She had been involved in this operation, and she had tried to leave. Just as Emma was piecing the situation together, she heard a noise behind her. A door creaked open, and suddenly, she was surrounded. A group of armed men emerged from the shadows, their guns trained on her. Emma froze, but Speedy didn't hesitate. The dog barked sharply, signaling the danger. Emma instinctively ducked, diving behind a stack of crates. Her heart raced, but her mind stayed focused. Speedy's instincts had saved her again. The armed group moved closer, but Emma had one advantage. She knew this town. She knew its streets, its alleys. She wasn't going down without a fight. In a split second, Emma reached for her radio. She called for backup, her voice steady, despite the threat closing in around her. Speedy barked again, drawing attention away from her just long enough for Emma to escape the immediate danger. But she knew this was just the beginning. Whoever controlled this operation had far more power than Emma had imagined, and it was up to her to expose the truth, no matter the cost. As she slipped away from the shack, a plan began to form in her mind. This wasn't just about Emma anymore. It was about the entire town, and Emma was determined to bring the truth to light, no matter who tried to stop her. Emma knew that time was of the essence. She couldn't waste another moment. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together. Emma's disappearance, the chemical traces Speedy had detected, the documents linking town officials to the drug trade. But the most important piece remained: the police chief. Emma had to confront him, and she knew it would be dangerous. But with Speedy at her side, she was ready. The dog's instincts had guided her every step of the way so far, and Emma trusted her more than anyone else. They had to go straight to the heart of the operation. The next day, Emma gathered her evidence: the vial of chemicals, the documents from the storage facility, and the information about Emma's forced involvement. She knew these pieces would be enough to confront the chief. Speedy seemed to sense the gravity of the situation. She was unusually calm, her gaze sharp, her movements precise. The two made their way to the chief's private estate, a grand mansion on the outskirts of town. Emma had no illusions about what she would face there. The chief was powerful, and he would do anything to protect his secrets. As they arrived, the massive gates of the estate opened slowly, revealing a long driveway lined with trees. Emma felt the weight of the task ahead pressing down on her. She parked the car and got out, keeping Speedy close as they approached the front door. Inside, the chief was waiting. He didn't look surprised to see them. In fact, he looked almost amused, as if he knew exactly why they were there. "Officer Thompson," he greeted her coldly. "I should have known you'd be the one to come snooping around." Emma's eyes narrowed. "I'm not here to play games, Chief. I have proof of your involvement in a drug operation that's been running right under everyone's noses." The chief scoffed. "You're out of your mind. You don't have anything." Emma didn't flinch. She placed the vial of chemicals and the stack of documents on the table in front of him. "You're wrong. I have everything." For a moment, there was silence. The chief's eyes flickered with a hint of nervousness, but it was quickly replaced by anger. "You think you can ruin me with this?" he spat. "You're making a huge mistake. You're just a small-town officer, and you think you could take down someone like me? You're delusional." Emma's hands trembled slightly, but she held her ground. "I know exactly what you've done. I know about the drug ring you've been protecting for years, and I know that Emma Reynolds was part of it, until she tried to get out." The chief's face darkened at the mention of Emma's name. He leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You don't know anything. Emma's death was an unfortunate consequence of her actions. She couldn't be allowed to talk." Emma's stomach churned, but she stayed calm. "You killed her to protect your secrets. You thought she was expendable, but you were wrong. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth." The chief's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched. "You've got nothing, Thompson. This is all just a wild story you've cooked up. No one will believe you." But Speedy wasn't done. The dog's nose twitched, and she walked confidently to a nearby bookshelf, her paws tapping softly against the wood. Emma followed her, and as Speedy sniffed the air, the dog stopped in front of a large painting on the wall. Emma looked closely. It was a painting of the chief, his face stern and proud, but there was something off about it. Speedy's paw struck at the base of the painting, revealing a hidden safe behind it. The chief's eyes widened in alarm. "What do you think you're doing?" Emma didn't hesitate. She pulled the painting aside, revealing the safe. Using the combination she had found in the documents, she unlocked it and opened it, revealing its contents, a ledger filled with records of the drug operation. There were names, dates, and transactions, all clearly documenting the network the chief had been running. But what caught Emma's eye was the last entry, Emma Reynolds. Her name was written there with a note beside it. Eliminated. No longer useful. Emma's heart sank. The truth was clear. Emma had tried to leave the operation, and the chief had silenced her to protect his empire. Just as Emma was about to move to make an arrest, the chief's reaction changed. His eyes hardened, and he reached for his phone. "You've made a grave mistake, Thompson," he said quietly, his voice now full of menace. "You won't make it out of here alive." A moment later, the door burst open, and a group of men entered, armed, dangerous, and loyal to the chief. "Take care of her," the chief ordered. Emma's pulse raced, but before the attackers could close in, Speedy sprang into action. The dog charged at the men, her powerful jaws snapping and growling. She knocked one of them to the ground, forcing the others to back off. Emma grabbed her radio, her voice firm as she called for backup. Seconds later, the sound of sirens reached the estate. The chief's men hesitated, and in that moment, Emma seized the opportunity. She pushed through the attackers, dodging them as Speedy continued to fend them off. Emma and Speedy managed to break free, but not before the chief gave one last command. "Cover everything up," he yelled, but it was too late. The truth was out. Later that night, Emma sent a final message to the media and the FBI, detailing the entire conspiracy. The FBI acted quickly, launching a full investigation into the chief and his network. Within hours, agents arrived in town, and arrests were made. The town's dark secrets were exposed, and the officers involved were taken into custody. In the courtroom, the chief tried to deny everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. Speedy's role in uncovering the chemical and identifying the link to Emma's disappearance was crucial. The jury had no choice but to convict the chief, and he was sentenced for his crimes. For Emma's family, the closure they had waited so long for finally arrived. They could now grieve for their daughter, knowing the truth about what had happened to her. As the town began to heal, Speedy was hailed as a hero. No longer just a narcotics dog, she had become the key to solving the case. Her quick thinking and incredible instincts had saved lives, and she was honored for her contributions to bringing justice to the cold case.